This is referee Doug Markham, and you're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
This is Steve BOWTIE Bryant here. Back in the 90s, I was a pro wrestling photographer for the South, and I released what might have been one of the original sets of indie trading cards. I ran across some of these original sets. They were up in Randall Fanning's attic all this time. PG-13 rookie card, Ricky Morton, George Weingroff as the Sheik, Chris Champion, Reno Riggins, Billy Montana, Gary Valiant, the Scorpion, the Medic, Rick Reynolds, Jeff Daniels, Mephisto and Dante, Ben Jordan, Steve Neely, Marcus Woodrow, Clinton Charisma, Little Farmer John. If you'd like an opportunity to get these cards, contact me now. You can get them for only $49.99. Contact me at stevebowtiebryant at iCloud.com. Get your set now while supplies last.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And as usual, I'm joined by my brother from the same father and or mother, Plastic Sheik, Jared Street. What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm trying to figure out the and or thing, but okay, yeah. I'm good. I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm good. Just, trying to do this thing here with this podcasting business, busy as ever, as always, and just doing some fun things with that and, getting to interview some cool people. And, we got some cool things coming up. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the past here. So, in the recent past, we've had, of course, Quentin Charisma, which that show did awesome. Lots of cool numbers on that one. Jumped to number 3 with the quickness. Okay. So it was like Hot Rod Biggs. He was right on your tail and
quickness
stuff.
With a Q, right?
Quickness with a Q. Yeah. Well, that's isn't that the way to spell it? Hold on. Do you know a different way to
No, I'm saying.
Okay. All right.
Identifying that.
Okay, so Shane Morton, of course, is leading the pack. And, of course, Hot Rod was number 2. Quentin jumped up to number 3 and put Greg Gagne to number 4, okay? Well, now Rick Reynolds' show dropped, okay? So it's funny, Rick Reynolds... It was like Quentin was the show that a lot of people like that listened to us and would send in messages. And some of them were the boys and some of them were just listeners. And they would say Quentin Charisma. And then a lot of the boys that maybe do or don't listen, they always were telling me, you should get Rick Reynolds. You should get Rick Reynolds. And the fact that we basically had 2 of the most requested guys in a row, was kind of blessing. So Quentin jumped to number 3, and then Rick Reynolds came in, and he was just scooting up the charts. And so now Rick Reynolds is our number 2 all time so far, as of yet. Every time he gains on Shane gains more. So it's like, I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, so Shane, Rick Reynolds, Hot Rod Biggs, Quentin Charisma, Kroll, and Greg Gagne is completely out of the top 5. So anyway.
Shane just calling up more Mortons to listen to it every time.
Yeah. He's like, hey, Teddy Morton and Arn Morton. Ole Morton, where you at? Listen to this. Yeah, but anyway, it's cool, man. But Rick, that was a great episode. Receiving a lot of great response from it. Again, Quentin, everybody felt like they were very genuine, and that's important. But yeah, man. So what did you think of the shows? I know you were on a holiday and you were able to.
Yeah. All of them have been good. Everybody, like you said, I think everybody comes across so genuine. And, unfortunately, a lot of these guys haven't had their story out there 20 times. I mean, there's people we might could get that, people have heard on 50 other podcasts, and right. they're gonna tell some of the same stories. It's just the way it is. They only have so many, and
inevitable. Yeah,
and people are gonna ask for the highlights a lot of times.
Sure.
So when we get guys like these that have put in the work, put in the grind, and put years into this business, and it's good for them to get their flowers and get the notoriety they deserve. So it's I think you get some genuineness that you just can't get out of somebody that you've heard everything from before.
Yeah. And, it's funny that you said that word genuine, because that is kind of the vibe we get from all these guys. But today's guest is absolutely somebody who I would say that about. In referee Doug Markham. Doug is just, I would say absolutely is one of those guys that you could say is a genuine guy. And, when it comes down to it, I was in the business a few years before him, but we made it to the show that a lot of guys wanted to work at in Nashville together. And so we have a little bit of a tie there. He had been doing a little work before he got to that show. I'd been doing a little work before I got to that show, but then that show happened. And that's kind of like a moment, an intersection there of when you meet somebody in your life and then you become friends with them. And then eventually you do a podcast and you bring them on as a guest. I mean, it's kind of like a full circle thing. But, Doug is just, man, I don't know anybody that can say anything bad about Doug. I mean, if they did, they're just making it up to rib on him, but when it comes down to it, Doug's just a great guy. Doug's a really good referee, very talented. I don't know that he's done with that yet. I do believe he still has the itch here and there. He had some curves in the road that he had to get around, but I know that he's in a good mindset right now. And, who knows if we've seen the last of Doug. Maybe we'll get to talk to him about that. But the biggest important part is I can't wait to, just learn more about Mr. Doug Markham, the referee.
Yeah, our first referee, it's, about time. Good to have one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, come on.
There's such a key to the business that people don't realize, I think.
Oh, yeah.
They're so key. Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. They're very important to the match itself. They're that third person, so I'm glad to have that. And he'll be the third person today on the podcast with you and I. Of course, we thank y'all so much for tuning in as always. You've treated us so well and you've just really showed us how much you enjoy listening to these stories that we're letting these guys tell. So we, first of all, want to thank you all so much for continuing to stick around with us. And more importantly, stick around after these messages because we'll have our guest, the referee, Doug Markham. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis. We're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Join me, Gene Jackson, for the Jackson Interaction Podcast, where I'll be doing one-on-one interviews with people from the world of professional wrestling, as well as stand-up comedy. You can get them anywhere podcasts are available in both video and audio form, but you can find them all at GeneJacksonPod.com.
All right, we are back with more from the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And as promised, I have a very special guest in one, Doug Markham. Doug, what's up, brother? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Good, brother. Good. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
What are you into these days?
Just work and go to Little League games and softball games and Monster Jam events. And
I see that. Yeah. It's wrestling with cars, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah, big trucks at least. Yeah. So it's kind of like, King Kong Bundy smashing a midget sometimes, So, So we always start the show with the very first question with my brother, the Plastic Sheik, Jared Street. Jared, take it away.
So, Doug, I know you might suspect what this question may be. It's, of course, patent pending. But today I've got a very special two-part question for you. And it's your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers and your Mount Rushmore of referees. So two different Mount Rushmore. 4 or 5, whatever you need to complete each list.
I was preparing for one. Now I got two. So
threw you a curveball.
Wrestlers, I would say Bobby Eaton would be definitely in there. Ric Flair would have to be in there. Probably Macho Man and Steve Austin.
Dude,
what a list.
Can't really argue that at all. There's nothing to
Yeah.
And then what about your referees? I can't wait to hear this one.
Referees, Tommy Young,
the GOAT. Yeah.
He would be first. Earl Hebner.
Gotta have Earl.
Mark Curtis, Brian Hildebrand.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And probably, the fourth one I would say probably Jerry Calhoun.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
And then for a fifth, I would have to throw Nick Patrick in there, maybe even Randy Pee Wee Anderson.
Yeah, man.
So those were the guys I grew up watching, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Saw Nick Patrick and Pee Wee Anderson so much watching WCW. It's a...
Yeah. And I mean, Tommy Young too. Come on, man. I love Tommy Young. To me, Jerry Calhoun and Tommy Young did have a similar style about them, and I feel like that Aubrey Edwards girl kind of somewhat tries to be the modern day version of them with the heavy reactions and very animated, but I don't know. I don't want to get into that yet. Maybe that comes up as a question later, but anyway, I love that. That list.
Both lists are phenomenal, man. That's great stuff. You can tell when you listed Bobby Eaton first with the wrestlers, that just shows we know where you're coming from. So
he was one of the smoothest guys in the ring I ever saw.
Dude, man, I tell you a funny story. So I'm working back when I was doing the Omar gimmick, and I'm working a show for Porter, and it's a big show. It's like a benefit or something. It's a big show, and he'd brought in Bobby Eaton. He'd brought in Ricky Morton. He'd brought in all these guys. And so in the back, I usually hung my suit and everything in a certain section. And this was our normal locker room there on Gallatin Pike when I was working for Porter. And underneath it was Bobby's riding partner and his bag in one seat. And we had a referee there. They called him All Night Bobby. He barely had a tooth in his head. Did you know Bobby at all?
No, I didn't know him.
Anyway, All Night Bobby, I thought the guy, I didn't know, who was the guy that rode around with Bobby, made towns with him? Taller guy, had a ponytail. Do you know him?
I don't know. No, Brian Thompson is who I know that Bobby used to travel with. So I don't know who that could have been.
Not sure either. Maybe it was just a one-time or a couple-time thing. But anyway, above Bobby's bag was where I hung my suit. So I was hanging my suit, and I said, whose bag is this? And this is the famous duffel bag. You know what I'm saying? And he goes, oh, that's just Bobby's. And I said, you reckon he'd mind if I moved it? And I thought it was Bobby, like the referee Bobby. And it was Bobby Eaton. And he was like, no, Bobby wouldn't care. And I moved, had I known, and I felt like, and Bobby didn't, he sold it. I don't even know if it bothered him, but I moved his bag over one seat. Had I known that was Bobby Eaton's bag, I would have worked it out to where I never even touched it. You know what I'm saying? Because that embarrasses me to this day that I did that. And yeah, just such a great man.
He did not care. I will assure you of that.
But it's, you know what I'm saying, that respect thing, Doug.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, and that's the famous duffel bag that he could pull out anything you needed. You need tape, you need thread, you need anything you need, a Band-Aid, you need a sucker. I mean, whatever. He's got it in there, I always thought he had a sleeping bag in there if he needed it, and it was like Santa Claus sack, except it was Bobby Eaton's duffel bag. But anyway.
Yep.
So to kind of get the show going, we could talk about Bobby Eaton. And by the way, when we do a Bobby Eaton episode, which I think we should do that anytime, we'll bring you back on because you knew him so well. But I want to start out talking about Doug Markham here. So obviously, you are our very first referee on the show, brother. And that's pretty cool, man. Right?
Cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah. And I've always thought about you as very high respect, man. I know you did your job well, but let's go back to the beginning here. So tell us a little bit about your early days, brother. Where were you born? Where'd you go to high school? How was it growing up where you're from?
I was born in Huntsville, Alabama, and I went to Bob Jones High School.
Okay.
But growing up, I became a fan of wrestling as early as I could remember.
Yeah.
My mom and dad were friends with Bobby Eaton and Orville Hutto whenever they were teenagers.
Yeah.
So that, I was around wrestling when I was a baby and, up until held pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
And so I've always liked it. And we used to have this cable system when I was like maybe 12, 13 years old. And we could get channels. I lived in Huntsville, but we had the Birmingham station. We could get New York stations. We got Dallas. So I was getting wrestling from all over the place. And it's like I didn't watch just certain ones. I watched every one I could, you know?
Yeah. You were probably in an area that you could probably watch Memphis. You could watch, obviously, we had TBS and the Superstation. Then, of course, we would have the WWF and stuff. Are you just one of those guys that went, if it was wrestling, you were trying to watch it? Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's us too. I mean, I remember watching Global when I was young. I remember watching, so many AWA, of course, anything we could watch. The only thing we really didn't get in our area was Memphis, unfortunately. That's the one thing I wish I knew more of in my younger days,
I remember watching Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to watch that too. we had the Dallas channel, and I would get, World Class would come on at like 10 o'clock at night on Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was watching that, and Mid-South, it came on one channel we had kind of late at night. And
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, real quick, I want you and the Sheik to do something for me real quick, okay? So I'm going to count to 3, and I want you to say your birth date, okay? So, Doug, you say your month and the date, okay? And then, Sheik, you say the month and the date, okay? So, when I count to 3...
Same time?
Same time, yeah,
okay.
Same time. All right, so 3, 2, 1, go.
August 26th. There you go. Good day. A good day.
Wow, yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I noticed that. I found that out online, Doug, because I was doing my stalking on you, man. And, when I saw it was your birthday, what's funny is Little Sheik's birthday, too. So Jared's got a son, Paxton. His birthday's the 26th, too. So he was born on Jared's birthday. Yeah. So that's hardly ever that happens, Yeah.
So I don't get to celebrate birthdays anymore. It's all about my son. So.
Yep.
Yeah. When I saw that, I popped, though. I thought I had to bring that up. So, Jared, go ahead with the next one. Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about, your start in working in wrestling. Who trained you, anything like that with all you do?
Well, my start came because of Orville Hutto.
Oh, Hut. He's great.
Yep. He, I had wanted to be in wrestling for a long time, since I was a kid, and back then, I didn't know how to go about doing it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I didn't really know anything about indie wrestling because, when I was growing up, it was all territories and stuff.
Right. It's on TV, and that's what we think exists. Yeah.
So I didn't really know about indie wrestling. Well, then Hutto was going to run a couple little shows in Athens, Alabama.
Okay.
And so I was kind of hanging out with him and doing whatever he needed done, at the building and stuff. And one day we were just riding around, and I told him I wanted to be a referee.
Yeah.
And he just kind of gave me you do. And so I said, yeah. And, well, he never said anything else about it. And then 2 weeks later, he called me up, and he said, you need to go get you some black pants, black shoes, a ref shirt, and a black belt. He said, I got you a shot in Mount Pleasant in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As far as training goes, I didn't have any.
You're just on the job training.
Yeah, and that was something later on that I thought about that meant a lot to me, was that Hutto was the only person that had that kind of faith in me, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure, dude. How old were you when you started? About what age was it?
Oh, God. I was old, man. I started in early 2012.
I was going to say that because I know you kind of came around, and I was just barely in the business myself. But anyway, go ahead.
The first night that I started, and I don't know the exact date because I honestly didn't think there would be a second date, you know?
Sure, exactly.
I thought this was just a tryout, just to, you know, let me see what it was like or whatever.
Right.
And
old family friend allowed you to try your dream, you know? And yeah.
And so we're on our way up there. I rode with him, and I kind of asked him, you know, do I not need to be trained? And he told me, he was like, if I didn't think you could do this, I wouldn't be letting you do it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that kind of clicked. I mean,
yeah.
And I started in Mount Pleasant. First night in the business, and I'm in the locker room with Tommy Heggie, Orville Hutto, Hot Rod Biggs, Mike Woods.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and Tim Bernesto.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, it was like, I couldn't help but learn.
And this was just something that Orville was running?
No, he wasn't running that. That was, I think Devin Domain ran it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And,
he just got you the booking. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Tim was the booker at the time.
Okay. And dude, for a voucher into the business, you can't beat Orville Hutto. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's as good as anybody you can get to vouch for you. Say, hey, this kid can do it, you know? So that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, without him, there wouldn't be a me.
Yeah. Well, hey, I've got those guys myself, so I know exactly how you feel. Now, one night, I got booked at Saw, so I'd been working for Porter, and I was tired of not getting paid, you know, and I kind of felt like at this point I was contributing to something that was much bigger, and I'm not making anything there. So one night I'm leaving there, and I'm pretty much wrapping it up there. And honestly, the promotion didn't last much longer, but TJ stopped me and said, hey, Jimmy, do you want to work Friday nights at Saw? And I was like, well, you know, I never thought about it. I just didn't know if anybody else would book me. Kind of like how you felt, you know? And sure enough, I end up at Saw with them. And then all of a sudden one night, I believe, did you ride in with Shane Morton or something? But anyway, I just remember you being there, and Shane was there, and Shane introduced me to you. Tell me a little bit about that, like getting to that point.
Well, to that point, I worked for Tony Falk before that.
Right. Okay.
I hadn't been in the business long at all, man. Maybe 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And one of the guys in the back comes up to me and he says, hey, you need to go to Nashville and talk to Tony Falk. And I said, for what? Because I didn't know.
Right.
You know, 2-3 months in, I didn't know what he was talking about.
Sure, yeah.
And he said, you're a good referee, and he needs a good referee, so you need to go talk to him. And so the next Saturday night, he tells me that he talked to Tony Falk and for me to go up there the following Friday.
Yeah.
And I did, and I went up and talked to Tony that afternoon and worked the show that night and kind of just started going up there every Friday and to Mount Pleasant on Saturdays. And I was still living in Huntsville at the time, too, doing this drive.
And how long was that of a drive?
To Nashville was like an hour and a half or so.
Yeah.
And then Mount Pleasant, it was probably about the same.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be nosy on specifics, but I mean, are you getting at least some trans on the way, or are you riding in with somebody?
No, I was doing it all on my own because I didn't know anybody at the time.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Nobody lived down there around where I was at, so.
Even if you did, you'd have to meet somebody a little ways on up there. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
On Saturdays, you know, for Mount Pleasant, I would meet up with Hutto and Ardmore, and we would ride the rest of the way together. But those Nashville trips was all me.
Yeah, that's I mean, I know how you feel. I mean, not to say I lived in Nashville and I was going to Millersville, so I know how, you know, some of that drive is, but that's nowhere near the Huntsville drive. You know what I'm saying? That's
right.
Now, okay, so I remember I'm in the back and I'm managing Shane and Bubba at the time, and we're working an angle with Gary Valiant, and all of a sudden Shane introduces me to you, and I'll remember it like, you know, he said, hey, there's a referee I want you to meet, and I go up to you and I shake your hand. And I just remember that very first meeting because you kind of are like, you seem confident, but I also can see like, you're like, man, I'm just trying to meet all these people. You're just kind of taking it all in. And one of my favorite things to try to do with you when you were in the ring, and I tried to do all this to all the refs, is I wanted to make the referee laugh or giggle. And that was my goal. If I could make the ref laugh and try to fight a laugh, that was my little secret story and stuff. So if I could ever make somebody smile or laugh or something. And because that would be me ribbing them, you know what I mean? But anyway, I remember you working there and I remember, man, I was like, dude, this guy's got it together, man. I had no clue you were barely in the business though,
That's, a lot of people said that, whenever I met Plunkett and Drew for the first time, they kind of said the same thing.
Like what you've been doing in Alabama, you've been working the shows down in Alabama.
That's kind of thing. People would ask me,
Yeah. Now, let me ask you something, because obviously during this time at Saw, it does transfer into NWA Saw, and it was those blue shirts with the NWA patch on it. And there's quite a few pictures of you out there with that. Was there a little drama with that NWA Saw shirt, ref shirt with you?
What do you mean?
Well, wasn't it something to where like, hey, I need that shirt back or something? I don't know.
Let's see. Probably, yeah. The night that TJ fired me.
That's it. What was that story, man?
Dude, that came about from TCW.
Okay.
Was running Nashville.
Okay.
And I had worked their TV tapings in Arkansas like the month before.
Yeah. And this is the Rivera guy, right? The place that Wolfie was working, and yeah.
Yep.
Riviera, yeah.
And what happened was one of the fans that came to Saul hit me up asking me about tickets to the TCW show.
Okay.
And all I told him is I could get him 2 tickets, right? So I got the tickets for him and brought them to him that night to Saul.
Yeah.
And somebody, I guess, told TJ that I was selling tickets to their show at his show, and he got mad. That's how that happened.
Dude, okay, man. And so what did he say to you? Just like, don't do that? He didn't even give you a 1 strike? He just said no.
No, man. He was like, that ain't right. And like at the time I didn't really understand that I did anything wrong.
Right.
But then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, I mean, I guess that is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's
like I shouldn't.
Yeah, there's like enough gray area there that it could be taken the wrong way. Yeah. Well, I just remember there was something about somebody kept saying, I need that shirt back from him. And I just remember maybe there was a delay on you getting the NWA shirt back to him or something. I don't know. I was like, man, I hate that. Well, first off, I hated that you were no longer there.
I did too. I loved working there. And I mean, I never had any hard feelings towards TJ because he was always good to me. Him and Kroll both, man. I love Kroll to death.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I hated I was gone too because I liked it.
Yeah. Now, so you're working for TCW, and this is kind of what I lead into too. They were doing some really cool stuff, man. Like I almost felt like that show, had it gone in a different direction, it could have easily been, something bigger than it ended up being. Had a lot of great names. It had a beautiful look to it. It looked like wrestling. Talk a little bit about the TCW deal.
That came about through Brian Thompson. He traveled with Bobby at the time. I think Bobby might have been living with him at that time.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure Brian was the one that, helped get me booked there.
Yeah.
And so I went out. The first show I did for him was in Arkansas. And I actually went out there with Wolfie for that trip. And that was my first, I guess, big TV taping that I ever did.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. And it was a lot of fun. So then when they asked me to do the Nashville show, I was, happy about that. And I thought I thought it was going to be a big thing too. And then I think they only had one more show after the Nashville show, and then it folded.
Yeah. And then didn't you work some with Global Force as well too?
Yeah, a little bit. It was kind of, I don't know, Global Force Light maybe at that time because.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't really doing the big TV tapings or the arenas or whatever at that time, but I did a bunch of fair shows for Jeff, and I did those the Music City Bowl shows that they do for the players and the families.
Yeah, those are cool though. Yeah,
those are fun. I did some of those too.
That's awesome. So what was the story with Global Force at the time? Was it just kind of like, hey, it's kind of like TCW didn't last long. Global Force was kind of like Jeff's, like he took a little bit of TNA from TNA and said, hey, I'm making my own thing with Global Force, basically.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like, I don't know what kind of phase you would call it, but he wasn't really running big shows with it, but he was still using the name, I guess.
Yeah, okay. I knew a few guys that were working there, like the announcer, not sure of his name. I just remember all of a sudden a bunch of dudes start riding down, I think from Kentucky, and it was like Cash Flow, Billy the P was a manager, and then Roy Guffey and another guy that was an announcer, and I can't remember their name, but it was like all of a sudden this crew came out of nowhere, and they were at Porter's and they were at TJ's. They were literally taking over Nashville. And I remember seeing that guy. He showed up in Global Force, the announcer guy, Matt or something. I can't, Matt Douglas, I'm thinking maybe. Anyway,
yeah.
Is that who that was? Can't remember.
Yeah.
So, question for you: who won the Spider-Man versus Green Goblin match?
Well, I think it was a draw.
Okay. That was cool, right?
Yeah. So that Wolfie came up with that whole idea. I had hit him up about doing, some art for me. And I kind of told him I just wanted it to be a referee because I had seen the one that he had did for Will Gibson.
Yeah.
And so I told Wolfie, I said, you just come up with whatever you want to do and, go with it. And
throw me in there.
That's what he came up with.
Dude, that was a cool shirt, man. I remember seeing that because the Will Gibson one has what? I think
it's Lawler and
Dustin Starr.
Dustin.
Yeah, I was trying to think of Dustin's name there. I think it was Dustin Starr, Lawler, and maybe Dustin's wife or something, and then Will standing there. And it's cool, man. That's a cool shirt. Wolfie's a heck of an artist. It's always fun, man. So obviously you're working the Tennessee area, you're doing this, and you're kind of going, and then eventually you end up working for Major League Wrestling, man. So, you're working at Global Force, you're doing these things, TCW. Direct us all the way to you leading up to MLW, man.
Oh, man. Well, back in, I guess, I don't even know the year. All the years ago. I suck at timelines, but Paul Adams started running, it was Southeastern Championship Wrestling.
Okay.
Over in Knoxville. And we were doing TV once a month over there. And so that's where I met Tom Pritchard, and he was working those shows over there. Yeah. And so it just kind of, we did those for a while. Something happened and they stopped doing that. And I just kept, going and going and going. And sometime the MLW thing came about sometime in 2018. I had started asking around about who to email and stuff like that. And so I had sent a couple of emails, and then I was booked on a show with the Dirty Blondes. And when they were, Colonel Parker was traveling with them. He was managing them.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
And they were in the MLW at the time. And so I was telling them, that I had sent a couple of emails and everything. And I'm pretty sure that they had a hand in helping get me up there.
Okay.
Because like a week or two later, I got an email saying, can you be in Chicago next month or whatever? So that's how that came about. My first show with them was in November of 2018. and I missed the next show in December, but then starting in January 2019, I did pretty much every show that year for them.
Okay, so they're traveling all over the place, right?
Yeah, once a month usually.
Yeah. Are you doing those drives, or are you flying, or?
No, I was driving. That was a really hard part, because I was still working full-time job.
Yeah.
40 plus hours a week. And then, like 2019, just for MLW, I was in Chicago twice, New York City twice, Milwaukee, Dallas, and Orlando. all in 2019
Oh man. And you living in Alabama, or are you living in Tennessee at that time?
No, I'm living in Tullahoma, Tennessee now.
Tullahoma, okay. And so I know it's like probably 15 hours, right? Or 15 in New York. I know it's not as bad to Chicago, but still that's a drive for sure. And then Orlando.
The New York and the Orlando trips, and one of the Chicago trips, I had somebody riding with me.
Okay.
But I mean, you know, if you don't have anybody to ride, you just got to do it yourself.
Man,
you got to figure out a way to make it work.
Are you? And please don't take this the wrong way, because I don't want to insult you, because I think very highly of you and your talent. Were you making money on these trips, or were you?
No.
Okay, you were losing money. But I mean, dude, and I'm sorry if that sounds like a disrespectful question. I didn't mean it that way.
No, it's not. I mean, because a lot of people think, you know, that even at the level that I was doing it, there was a lot of people that thought that I made a lot of money.
Of course.
And I'm like, no, I really don't, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm doing it for the love of it, and to try to catch the right eye or whatever to try to get signed. I mean, that's your end goal, is to try to make a living at it, you know?
Yep, absolutely. It's what, I tried to do music, a little bit of wrestling, now this podcast. I'm trying to kind of catch the right ear or eye or whatever. I know that exact deal. With MLW, to me, that's kind of like what you would consider like minor league baseball. You know what I'm saying? They're doing high quality shows that look amazing, and they're not quite to the WWE level, but at the same time, I could easily see, hey, somebody's there, somebody sees you, says, hey, this guy's a hell of a ref. Let's try him out. Let's do it, and then that's where it clicks. Yep. So really, sometimes, like you said, you're doing it for the love, which at the same time, that, there's always a tax with doing it for the love. That's just the truth, Yeah. How did you meet Court Bauer? Did Court book you? I mean, did Court bring you there, or was it somebody else? How did you, I know he was the boss, so obviously that was the guy, but did you meet him and that's how it came about, or did somebody introduce you?
I didn't get introduced to Court until I got there. And,
okay.
Show days, he was always busy, and I mean, if you had to talk to him, you could, but
sure,
I never really bothered him a whole lot.
Right. Who was the in that you had at MLW, or who got you there?
Well, the email that I received was from the booker at the time. MSL is what he.
Oh yeah, MSL. Yeah, used to be on a podcast with Kevin Sullivan. I remember MSL and Kevin Sullivan had a podcast. It was really good. I used to listen to. So MSL was the booker, and he's the one that kind of brought you in. Now, at that time, tell me some of the names that were at MLW.
At the time I was there, we had Brian Pillman Jr., Davey Boy Smith Jr., Teddy Hart, let's see, MJF was there, Hammerstone.
Yeah.
It was a great roster. Jacob Fatu, he was there at the time too.
Yeah. So was MJF already working the gimmick at that time?
Yeah.
Was he keeping it going in the locker room too?
To a point.
Yeah. So I know how a ref kind of works. You basically, like, hey, you're working this match with these guys and stuff like that. That's kind of when you talk to some of the guys. Did a lot of the guys keep to themselves, or was it a pretty open locker room where, I'm thinking of the indies like I worked on, the smaller indies. Was it a little more higher level than those, or was it kind of similar to where everybody kind of congregated with each other?
It was wide open. I mean, everybody, hung out and just did whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was always cool, though.
That's cool. It
was fun to work there.
Yeah. Tell me, what was your favorite match you did while you were working there?
Oh, man.
Or maybe a couple,
There's one in particular that I can remember was when the Von Erichs won the tag team titles, and I was reffing that match. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I don't know, man. There was a lot. I reffed Jacob Fatu matches. I always enjoyed reffing.
Yeah. What was it about those that you liked?
He's just so good. I don't know why he's not already been signed to WWE or somewhere.
Why is he not in that bloodline? Why is he not in the bloodline?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll happen, but I don't know.
It's funny, man. I don't get that either, because he's got it all together. He can work, and he looks good, and he's got that great look. And I mean, he's just, he's definitely, it makes me scratch my head as to why he's not doing something with the bloodline as well. But yeah. So I'm doing, at this time, around the time that you're doing this, what I'm actually doing is I'm living in North Carolina with my wife, but I'm working in Virginia. So the way it would work is I would stay the weekends with her, usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then I would drive up to Virginia, work a shoot job, not wrestling or anything. And I would work my shoot job, and I would actually stay with my parents and then drive back to North Carolina. And basically it's all about the job that I had and moving to North Carolina when I got married. So at this time I'm driving and I'm listening to a ton of podcasts at this time. I hadn't started the podcast with Wolfie D. It was in my mind to I wanted to start one. I'd been wanting to start a podcast for a while, but just never made it happen. And I'm listening to all the podcasts basically at this time, a lot of the ones on ad-free shows. And the one I was listening to, especially around this time, was the What Happened When with Tony Schiavone and Conrad. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden one day, Conrad brings up, he says something to Tony Schiavone about working with Doug Markham and maybe getting him fired from MLW or something, and just a joking manner with Tony Schiavone. And Tony's like, I didn't do that. And I'm like, hold on. And I rewound it, and it was you, Doug Markham. And I was like, holy crap. I said, I knew you were working at MLW, and trust me, I was pulling for you, man. I was stoked to see one of the good guys that I'd known forever. I was stoked to see you doing what you were doing. So I hear this on Conrad's podcast, and I'm like, holy crap. And I rewound it like 3 times just to make sure I heard it correctly, dude. That was nuts for me. When did you hear about that you were on that podcast, or were you listening to it at the time?
At the time I was listening. I started out, like, I didn't even know what a podcast was.
Sure.
And me and Plunkett had went to Illinois, I think, for a show.
Okay.
And we were coming back. We were on our way back, and we were talking about wrestling and different stuff, and the subject of Tony Schiavone came up.
Yeah.
And I said, I would like to hear like a shoot interview or something with him. And Plunkett says, you don't know about his podcast? And I said, no. And he told me about it. And so we got back to my car, and so the rest of the way home, I started listening to it. And so then I started keeping up with it, and so yeah, I knew about it, but I didn't know he was going to say all that ahead of time.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, do you know this? What do they mean by all that? Was it just a rib on Tony, that Conrad's ribbing Tony, or is there something to that Tony Schiavone got you fired?
No, it ain't nothing to it. It was just Conrad ribbing Tony.
Yeah, and Doug Markham from Huntsville, also very similar to Conrad Thompson from Huntsville. Now, I know you may be in a different tax bracket. No disrespect to you. He's in a different tax bracket than all of us. But what I mean by that is
there ain't too many people in that same bracket.
I know, and I know a lot of people that hate on Conrad because he's successful. But to me, dude, to hate on the GOAT, I mean, he's the guy that kind of does podcasts better than anybody, and I wish I could do it that good. You know what I'm saying? So to know that now, have you met Conrad a few times?
Yeah.
Have you partied with Conrad maybe?
Yeah, we've hung out.
And how is he as a guy, just to be a kind of a goof?
Oh, he's fun. Down to earth. I mean, he's great to be around.
Yeah. And I mean this in the best way possible. He's kind of like the ultimate of all of us. You know what I'm saying? Because we're all huge fans of wrestling. Not only does he get to talk to all these wrestlers, he runs an empire. He's best friends with my favorite wrestler of all time. And then at the same time, he ends up marrying his daughter, so he kind of, he won a lot of that,
Yeah.
So, anyway, I just kind of wanted to bring that up because I popped. I was like, holy crap. They're talking about Doug Markham on the Tony Schiavone podcast. Think about little Doug, okay? Think about Doug growing up. Obviously, you knew Bobby Eaton, Arville, but can you imagine ever that you would be mentioned on the Tony Schiavone podcast?
No, it's crazy. I mean, like when I was working for MLW, when I first started, like the first show that I went to, I'm pretty sure the first couple, Tony Schiavone was still doing commentary there.
Yeah.
And he, I mean, like you said, little Doug was thinking, man, this is crazy. Like I'm reffing matches that's, being called by Tony Schiavone it's nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts. And I'm happy for you, dude. I thought it was so cool, man.
So, Doug, this is a question, that I think is important to ask. There's a lot of people that love wrestling, but maybe they don't have the height, the build, the pedigree, bloodline, whatever you want to call it, to be a professional wrestler. They don't have the athleticism, whatever, a lot of factors. But such an important role in wrestling is the referee. What do you think makes a great referee?
Oh, man. That's a good question. And I still don't consider myself great, so I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. Just one that really knows how to work. Because a lot of refs, just stand in the corner and watch.
Yeah, they're not involved.
And that it drives me nuts. God, I don't know how to word it.
Maybe just understanding the job, just understanding what you got to do and what part you play. Yeah.
Yeah. Understanding the job. That's understanding the job and learning it and learning how to work.
Did MLW use the earpieces, or did you know what you were doing before you got in the ring and what you needed to be done?
They did use them.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I kind of got used to them, was there.
Yeah. I know that's part of the current referee deal. I know there's guys on the indies that don't use them, but I know that's kind of part of what a referee is now on the higher levels.
Yeah, now it's kind of, I guess, needed.
Yeah.
But I understand why we have them and stuff. I don't care for them personally.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I got used to them, but, it's just something extra on you that's not normally there.
Right.
I kind of think it seems to me a little bit like a Vince McMahon invention, because he's such a control freak. But, I mean, I don't know. That's what I've always thought about. Probably earpieces.
Who is in your ear, Doug? Is it the agent?
Usually it would be Court.
Okay.
He would be the one. Most of the time, he was pretty quiet when I was in the ring.
Yeah.
And everybody told me that was because I was doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
There was a few times when he was screaming, but...
Well, what would he be screaming about?
Just positioning or, time cues or something. Just...
Sure.
If I needed to be 2 feet to the left or just whatever.
Yeah. I understand, because they're making a TV product there, so that makes sense. So, I've heard all kinds of stories about that kind of stuff. I'm sure that was not always very pleasant, and I can definitely understand that. So, there are, where you were working on a television product and doing that, a lot of the current and this, WWE, I think, we talked to on the Wolfie D podcast. We talked to Drake Younger, and obviously he had worked for NXT and WWE, did a match at WrestleMania. I mean, this guy had done a lot, but he kind of came from also the deathmatch scene and stuff, but it turned into a referee and ended up doing a very good job at it. And I was saying that, the WWE refs to me are almost what you would call perfect. But when you watch a match, and I've actually started to watch a match from the perspective of looking at the referee, because I think it's kind of like a third way to watch the match. You know what I'm saying? So you watch from the heel perspective or the baby perspective, or you watch from the referee's perspective. Are there things currently about TV referees that annoy you at all?
Well, I don't watch a lot of current stuff.
Okay, me either. I get it. Yeah.
But I don't know. Some of the overselling and the I don't know, just taking away from a match. You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
The attention don't need to be on the ref.
Right. And I almost feel, and I'm not knocking her because I'm sure she loves her job and is very good at it, but the Audrey Edwards, I feel like she kind of sometimes can take away. It's almost like she's trying to be, in the match itself, but.
Right.
I don't want to just sit here and knock somebody, but it's like there's an element of doing it like kind of like Jerry Calhoun or Tommy Young, to where you kind of sell the move that they, like if Lawler did a pile driver, Jerry Calhoun would kind of do that thing where he like reacted to how the pile driver would make him feel. You know what I mean? And there's an art form to that, and surely you mentioned them in your Mount Rushmore, and they're in my Mount Rushmore as well of referees. Tommy Young, Jerry Calhoun are both. But to me, there's an art to that, to where you're selling and making it an impactful showing, but at the same time, you're not just like distracting. It's a fine line. Trust me, I'm a manager. I did a manager. It's kind of similar to a manager in that I don't want to pull the heat away from my guy. I want to direct it to the match and to my guy. I don't want to pull it to me. And it's kind of a fine line you got to walk there.
Yep.
That's right. It's the talk of Middle Tennessee, the channel you love to hate and the channel you hate to love. It's Brian Turner from Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. And if you're looking for matches from Wolfie D to Jerry Lawler to Dusty Rhodes and the team that put a pimp before your eyes and a goatee between your thighs, Boudica and Athena, go to lostwrestling.com. See, I made it easy for you. Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. Booyah.
Hey everyone, this is Shane from Insane Shane's World. I release wrestling figures of enhancement talent, mid-card wrestlers, and wrestlers that you never thought would have a figure available. So if you're interested in adding a really cool and rare figure to your collection, then don't hesitate to contact me at shamtheman73@gmail.com. That's SHAMtheman73@gmail.com. You can also join my Facebook group. Just search Insane Shane's World.
This is just something I want to ask you before we get into our patented name game. Do you have any funny road stories that you can tell us that came up that maybe, something that I know you did a lot of driving by yourself, but in those instances that you were riding with somebody, is there anything funny that popped up that maybe you can tell without, implementing anybody in a crime or anything?
I'll give you one that you might have seen post or comments on Facebook and maybe not know what it was about.
Okay.
This one night we were in Rockwood and it was Plunkett and Buzz.
Oh man.
And Bobby Eaton and me. And we were driving back to Nashville. But when we left the building, everybody walks out to the car and Bobby just got in the back. Okay, so I got up front So it was, Plunkett and Buzz and Bobby and me, and you got to have 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Well, Bobby got in the back, so I got in the front.
Yeah.
So Plunkett and Buzz start in on me. They're like, man, I can't believe you made Bobby sit in the back. So, and it just keeps going and nothing I can say is going to change it. And so we stop at the store. Everybody goes in, gets their stuff. We come out. Everybody gets back into the car the same way.
Yeah.
So we leave and we get down the road and they start in on me again. Well, this time, without missing a beat, from the back seat, Bobby says, guys, I begged him in the store to sit up front, and he told me no. So from then on, Bobby just took the rib and ran with it. To this day, even anytime me and Bobby would go anywhere after that,
yeah,
we would be in a hotel or something, and I'd get a text on the phone from either Buzz or Plunkett, and it would say something like, you better not make Bobby sleep in the floor, you dick, or something like that.
Oh, man. Well, that's funny that you say all that about this. So I tell you what, why don't we go ahead and lead into the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling patented name game. Would you like to play the name game, Doug Markham?
Sure.
All right. DJ, hit the music. All right, we are back with Doug Markham and the name game on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. And the very first name, and you've been talking about him here, and you've known him all your life, but talk about Bobby Eaton.
Well, Bobby, I didn't really know him my whole life, but my parents knew him when they were teenagers, and then I didn't see him again until, later on. But Bobby was he's just one of the best humans that ever walked the earth, I guess.
Yeah.
Most humble man that I've ever met. He never understood why people wanted to pay to get his autograph and stuff like that. We would go to these conventions and stuff, and he would tell me, I just don't understand why they want to pay money for me to sign that picture or whatever. And I'm like, because you're freaking Bobby Eaton.
Yeah. Seriously.
He didn't understand that.
Yeah.
He was very humble.
Yeah, so humble, extremely underrated, and is often quoted as being one of the greatest of all time by Ric Flair, Yeah. So when Ric Flair says you're great, there you go. So were you around him much later on in his life before he passed, Doug?
Well, the last weekend that we had together, we went to West Virginia for a Friday and a Saturday show.
Yeah.
And that was the first weekend of March 2020. And we were supposed to go to Ohio 2 weeks later for Bobby Fulton's show. And COVID happened the week after the West Virginia trip and shut everything down.
Yeah.
And so I didn't see him anymore after that. We talked on the phone several times, but
yeah, it was sad. That I just know that the world was a better place having him in it. And I worked with him a couple times in Virginia and got to know him. And once you know Bobby and he respects you, I mean, to say that Bobby I felt like respected everybody, but what I mean is he at least knows what you're doing enough. And then I would work I managed him once for Porter in Kentucky. So when I saw him at Saw, and I've told this story a million times, the listeners are probably tired, but I'm going into Saw, and on the back wall, it's Bobby, it's Cersei, it's Reno, and Wolfie. And I go up, and Bobby just stands up and immediately hugs me. How you doing, brother? How you doing? Everything good? How's things been going on and stuff? And he hugs me. I mean, it's a big hug. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Wolfie and Reno sitting there, and Reno's like, well, he kind of gives this thing to where if he's all right, I can't, he must be all right if Bobby likes him, and it kind of got me an in there with those guys to where they really didn't know me. And of course, I'm sure Reno's favorite manager was Paul Adams, and for good reason. Paul was great. But it was like, okay, this guy actually, he might be worth something to have around. So that was just
Bobby. He used to get me bookings too. He would call me up and ask me if I was booked on a certain date, and like if a promoter was calling him to book him.
Yeah.
Well, he would get me booked because we would ride together.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And who's going to argue with Bobby Eaton if he tells them that he's bringing a referee, right?
Right. They're going to be like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's a voucher that voucher, and in no disrespect to Arvil, but that voucher's even more than Arvil. That one is one of the highest vouchers you can get as far as in wrestling goes, So love that man and wish he was still around, that just a great, great man. So many we've lost, but Bobby's one of the biggest, I think, as far as that goes. Jerry, go ahead with the next.
So Jimmy was kind of leading me into it there, but how about Arvil Hutto? Tell us a little bit about Arvil.
Arvil is a really good dude too. Him I have known my whole life pretty much. Off and on, there's several years we'd go and not see or talk to each other, but I've pretty much known him my whole life. And like I said earlier, he's the only person that had enough faith in me to put me in the ring for the first time. So without him, there's no me in wrestling.
Yeah, he was great. He was great to us when he was on the podcast. He was just such a genuine guy.
So modest too, so humble.
Yeah.
He just doesn't believe, he's like, he's just great to text with and talk to. And we've got something planned for the Wolfie D show with the whole Mephisto Dante crew as a somewhat part 2 to the episode we had him on. And, Tommy and Arvil, man, you could talk to them all day about wrestling and they would tell you a new story and just they're treasures, and these are the guys that, to me, they are neither you nor myself for the little bit I did. Neither of us would matter without the roads those guys paved for us, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How about we owe this guy a lot. After we had him on, we've had some incredible success at booking a lot of guys. But how about Mr. Shane Morton?
Oh, man, Shane. He has done a lot for me. He's the one that orchestrated the deal that brought me to Saul for the first time. I don't know, he saw something in me. He's told me that before, he said, you got a lot of potential. I see a lot in you, and so he took me to Saul that first time. And, anytime he would run a show, I would work for him, the whole Morton family has been great to me.
Yeah, they're all great.
The whole time, every time, everyone I've ever met treated me like family.
Absolutely.
I love Shane to death.
Yeah. Shane, Steve, Bubba, Cody, David. I've managed against all them. Jerry Lynn's hilarious, total troublemaker. She is. She's a trip. Yeah, Brandon's also another referee, Brandon Morton, To me, they're all a great crew, and I think the world of all of them, honestly. They're up there. They've got a special place in my heart, that whole family. And I always joke, and I'm just going to say this, Shane's show has reached levels that we never expected to reach with this podcast. And, he hit, I'll just say it, 2,000 plus downloads, and that's not even counting the YouTube views and stuff. And he's number one, and I don't know that anybody will eclipse that, although Rick Reynolds might be getting up there, so far. Quentin's been high too, but what I mean by that is I can't wait till other people start listening to it, because I believe it's just been all the Morton family listening at first, Yeah, they're great people. Yeah, his wife's awesome. When I was working for Shane, and it was probably some of the same shows you were reffing, you know, I brought my son because I would have my son sometimes, and I'd be like, all right, Cash, we're going to a wrestling show, and we would ride there. And Virginia, his wife, she's so sweet. She would take care of Cash while I was being a dastardly heel, you know.
Yeah, Virginia's awesome. Her and my wife hang out now on Friday nights in Tullahoma.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
She's a sweetheart. Okay, so the next name on the list for the name game is Mr. Tommy Mercer, a.k.a. Crimson.
Crimson. He has done a lot for me. I met him for the first time when we were working at Saul. Didn't really get to know him a lot there. And then when he started Tried and True Pro Wrestling in Clarksville, I worked for him the first show that he did and ended up working every show after that for a long time.
Yeah.
That was also a good show. That Tried and True, man, that was so much fun.
Yeah, a lot of great talent on there too, you know.
Yeah, Crimson's a good dude.
Yeah, that one was kind of something that was a little bit geared to, you know, his past in the military too, right? He had guys on there that were, you know, were veterans of the military, and we love the troops, obviously. We big supporter of them, and to know that he's a veteran, but also, you know, a veteran of the wrestling ring too. And he was one of the first guys that kind of taught me that appearance was important. You know, I worked a show with him and Sam Shaw. They came in for a couple shows for Porter, and we were sitting in the back, and honestly, we were there much after everybody had left. And, you know, a lot of the guys kind of took that stuff for granted, but I always like to listen to these guys talk. And, you know, I said, you know, I just said something like to Tommy and Sam, I said, well, you guys look like $1 million, you know what I mean? And they said, you have to, man. That's if you want to be at that next level, that's what you got to look like, you know. That's the look they need you. And I was never going to need to look like they did, but it taught me that taking inventory on the look that you provide to the crowd was important. So I had a 3-piece suit, you know, I had a million ties, and I thought, well, I'm never going to be muscular like them, or at that point it wouldn't make sense, but I needed to take my look seriously too, and that's when I kind of tried to upgrade my look a little bit after I talked to them and listened to them talk, you know. So
right.
Yeah, great guys too. Great guys.
All right, how about one of our it's our first guest, but I wasn't a part of the interview, so maybe we got to rectify that sometime.
And
how about Jeremiah? How about Jeremiah Plunkett?
Plunky. I think I met him for the first time at Saul also, when him and Drew was working up there.
Yeah.
And we became friends and started hanging out outside of wrestling. And I remember the first time I went on a trip with him and Drew to Memphis. That was still probably 2013, 2014, maybe.
Yeah.
And I was still trying to get noticed and get my name out or whatever. So I went to Memphis with them, and I worked for free that day because I wasn't booked. I just showed up with them because I didn't have anything else to do.
Why not, right?
I ended up working. Yeah. So I worked for free and had a fun time with Plunkett and Drew. That was my first road trip with them ever.
Yeah.
That was a fun time.
Yeah. What a great.
Plunkett, he's one of my best friends in or out of wrestling.
Yeah. Great guy. Heck of a wheelman too. I don't think I've said that before, but Plunky's a heck of a wheelman. You know, he'll get you there safe. I'll just say that, you know, so which is important. So the next one I have on the list here, and these guys, you know, talk about all the great tag teams from Tennessee. You know, I always talk about the Devils, Wild Boys, Mortons, the Scots, you know, so many great tag teams, Disturbing Behavior, so many just the Hero Killers. I mean, the Untouchables, as we talked about, Drew and Plunky. But this team, they rose above it all and ended up taking it to the big time, and I just need to hear your thoughts on PG-13.
I always liked PG-13. I remember Jamie came to Huntsville to a fair show one time. He probably hadn't been in the business long at that point either.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing him like early on, and Wolfie. I mean, I always liked their gimmick. I liked the way they work.
Yeah.
And then I met Wolfie at Stadium Inn when I was working for Tony Falk. That's where I met him for the first time. But yeah, PG-13, they're a good tag team.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about Sam Shaw?
Sam, he's a heck of a talent, man. I worked a lot with him at Tried and True. He was the champion for a while, and he's a beast in the ring, man. Really nice guy, though. Kind of quiet.
Yeah. Great guy. Great look. Heck of an artist.
Oh, yes. He's a very good artist. I've got one thing that he did for a Christmas present for my wife that I gave her, and he also drew one of my tattoos that I have.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I hope good things for him, too, because he's been doing some cool stuff with that Dexter gimmick and stuff, and I really hope that he, ends up... I would love to see him do more and more, because I think he's worked for it. Funny story about Sam is he gave me my first hard way. he does the leg drop off the top rope, the Alabama Jam, whatever you want to call it, and I think either Plunky or Tommy dropped an elbow. I think it was Tommy dropped an elbow on me, and then Sam, did the leg drop, and I did not turn my head the right way. I actually looked straight up, and he kind of caught me, and he felt bad about it, but there was no reason to feel bad. It was my fault, and busted my lip pretty good. So that was my last night working for Porter, and I spit a little of my blood in the ring to give to Porter there. So as I was leaving, so my first hard way came from Hot Rod Biggs. Oh, really? Let's hear that.
Yeah. Well, it was a kendo stick to the head, and I guess it just called me just right.
Yeah.
And laid me open, man.
Yeah.
I remember I got to the back that night. When I got to the back, Homie D, Tommy Hagee's son.
Yeah.
He said, I didn't know you were supposed to get color. I said, I wasn't.
Oh, man. Hey, speaking of, have you ever had to hold a blade for anybody?
Oh, yeah. Lots of times.
Lots of times? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really like doing it, only because I just don't want to be seen passing it,
Right.
So, and I mean, I guess I've always done it good enough or whatever. I've never had anybody complain about it, but it's just, I guess it's more of a mental thing,
Definitely. You don't want to make a mistake, and that's one extra thing. That's one extra thing you have to worry about. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What's the crazy? I mean, because I know guys that keep them in their cheek. I know guys that do it in their wrist tape, and I know guys that count on the referee to have it. That kind of thing. Have you seen a lot of guys use the mouth razor?
I haven't really seen any guys here lately that put it in their mouth.
Yeah, that's super old school.
Guys.
Yeah, the old school dudes that did it, man. That's some crazy stuff. Yeah, I can't imagine that, bro. If I were,
that just seems risky. Ooh.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that's how Tully used to hold his.
Man, wow.
Was in his mouth.
Oh, swallow that.
Oh.
Jared,
think about that.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
All right. How about Double J, Jeff Jarrett?
Jeff Jarrett. I was a fan of Jeff. I mean, he's always been a good worker.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the first time I met him, but then whenever Jason James started working with him, I was friends with Jason. I met him at Saul, and so I would work the shows Jason would book me to work their shows and stuff. And then I got to know Jeff, better when I started working the shows and stuff. He's always treated me good, always been good to me.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay, the next one on the list here, these guys kind of modified their gimmick. They brought in extra people. They changed the name, but the original team went by Team IOU.
Oh, man. I met both of those guys at Stadium Inn, and at the time, they were actually feuding with each other.
Oh, okay.
Kerry was a heel, and Iggy was babyface. And then next thing you know, they were a tag team. But, yeah, I always had fun working with them. Both of them are good guys. I always had, enjoyed being around them.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting gimmick, too. It was started out, Jared, as a boy and his dog. It was like Nick, they kind of almost did Nick was doing he was like a teenage heartthrob kind of character that he played. He was like the eternal baby face. And then, Kerry was this rough and tumble Dutch Mantel trained, kind of like a Dutch in a way, wasn't he, a little bit? Like he had a Dutch Mantel style about him. And he kind of developed into a dog. So the idea was they were two tag teams, but they were like a boy and his dog. And they even had a comic book that I was in, and the very first one I think I was in. And they modified it into being the tag team called the Carnies, which was a very almost like if American Horror Story and the Team IOU did a crossover kind of where Nick Iggy turned into kind of more like I don't know what his style turned into. Yeah, ringmaster. And then you had Kerry kind of turned more like into a gargoyle dog kind of thing. It wore a leather mask and very interesting gimmick. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't get a bigger, I know they worked for Ring of Honor and stuff, but I was surprised that nothing more happened for them. It just,
Me too.
I know they're still working and doing their own thing. Kerry has kids and Nick, and they're all doing their own thing. But it's funny to me that I just feel like those guys really should have been somebody that somebody should have taken and taken on and done something with,
Yeah, they're good in the ring. And, I mean, they had a good look. The gimmick and everything I thought was good.
For sure. Interesting and original, too.
Yeah, they were always evolving it, too.
Yeah, constantly.
This is another guy that is gone too soon, and we would have loved to have as a guest on the podcast. But how about Tracy Smothers?
Oh man, Tracy. I'll tell you a funny story about Tracy. First night I ever met him, I was excited. It was like June 2013, and it's on YouTube. You can see the match. I'm reffing the match. It's Tracy and Josephus, and they're going against Team IOU.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know really what happened at the end of the match, but after I made the 3 count, Tracy gets up and gets on me, and he kind of just gave me a axe handle across the back, and I went down, and he kicked me out of the ring. So I'm just laying there on the floor chilling, thinking that everything's good,
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I can't breathe. And I didn't know exactly what hit me, but something hit me, like in the ribs.
Yeah.
Well, Tracy had reached out in between the middle rope and the top rope with that prelim that he used to carry.
Yes.
Jimmy, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And he hit me with that thing. And so we get to the back, and he was saying that I took too long coming to make the 3 count or something like that.
Oh, man.
And so I apologized to him and shook his hand and said thank you and went on about my business, right?
Yeah.
Well, it was about a month later, I guess, when he was booked up there again. And he came walking in the dressing room, and I was sitting there, and it was still early. There wasn't nobody else in there. And he came over to me, and he sat down, and he started apologizing. And I told him, I said, you don't have to apologize to me. It's over, whatever. And he was like, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did. And, I don't know if, like, the night that it happened and I shook his hand and said thank you, I don't know if I, like, earned his respect or what. But from that night on, man, Tracy was gold with me.
Yeah.
We had so much fun every time we would be on a show together.
Yeah. He was a great person to be around. I recommend everyone go to YouTube as quickly as you can and go watch this match. It's a Bobby Eaton, Tracy Smothers. It's actually just schmoz at this point. It's the IWA Mid-South Riot on YouTube, and they destroy that place, man. And I think IWA Mid-South had just moved into this smaller building, and him and Bobby, it's barely a fight with him and Bobby. They would kind of lock up and stuff, and then Tracy's going crazy. And again, I know he's working. You can tell he's working, especially because the locker room. Have you seen this, Doug?
No, I don't think I have.
Yeah, go watch it. The locker room clears out. He beats all them up. Tracy does. Bobby just kind of dips for a minute or two. Tracy's tearing the place up, and the crowd's going nuts, man. There's a girl that throws a chair. It might throw that log, that piece of wood at Tracy. She threw something at him. He gets mad, and she runs off, and her boyfriend tries to get in the way. Then later on in it, there's a fat guy. I mean, he is just not the kind of guy you would ever want to see have his shirt off, and he's got his shirt off, and he's like staring all tough at Tracy. And dude, Tracy's like a foot taller than this guy, and the guy's standing there looking at Tracy like he's like giving him the like fingers where he's like saying come on, like he's got his hands down, but they're kind of making the come on, like. And Tracy's like, well, you don't want this. And he like takes the fat guy takes a cigarette and sticks it on his arm and burns his own self, showing Tracy that he's tough. And nothing happens with the guy, but it was just like the weirdest thing to see. And then of course Tracy just continues tearing up the place. I highly recommend. I don't know if it's a Brian Turner video. I don't think it is, but I highly recommend you first go watch Brian Turner's VHS Rehab YouTube channel. That's a highly recommend. But I definitely highly recommend you go and type in Tracy Smothers IWA Mid-South Riot. Yeah, it's awesome. And it was so effectively done by two world-class wrestlers, but also at the same time to see how Tracy controlled the crowd with doing this riot. I mean, of course, there's people running every which way trying to get out of the way. And a lot of the guys that worked on the IWA Mid-South, roster, they kind of look like the crowd when they're rolling out of the locker room. So it's hard to tell which part of it is the crowd and which part of it is the boys. But long story short, Tracy was just a master of that kind of stuff. And,
Yeah, we thought we were at the fair show one night in Nashville, and we thought he was going to start a riot up there at the fair one night.
Oh, man. Oh, just a master. Oh, miss him too. Definitely, didn't get to know him as well as some others, but I got to know him a little bit. Just a great guy. So, well, hey, Doug, that is it for the name game, brother. Definitely glad you played and appreciate you playing. Jared, you get the next question.
All right, Doug, I had a question kind of pop into my head when we were going over your Mount Rushmore and then even the referee question about what makes a great referee. What are your thoughts on I got two matches in specific where referees maybe have been blamed or they were a big part in the match maybe. So the first one would be the Montreal Screwjob. What kind of pressure do you think that like Earl Hebner had to feel in that moment? Because he was close to Brett, but his job is basically on the line if he doesn't do what he's told.
That's like probably the toughest position you could ever be put in.
Yeah.
And I've heard the story told by Gerald Briscoe, and I've heard it told by Jim Cornette, and I've heard it told by Earl, and it's like, I mean, he did what he had to do.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much why Briscoe said that he waited until Earl was on his way to the ring to tell him because he didn't want to give him any time to have to think about it.
Right. It was just like he knew what he had to do, and that was it, you know? Yeah.
And then the other...
Man.
Yeah.
The other thing, same year, 1997, about a month apart, the Starrcade 97 Sting Hogan match with Nick Patrick. I heard Nick do a thing recently talking about there was just so much confusion that day. Like everybody, like there was like 10 different things going around between Bischoff, Hogan, Sting, and everything like that. But it's always how bad do you think, I guess, WC, maybe my question is, how bad do you think WCW botched it by doing that and then like going with it as a slow count when it was or a fast count when it obviously was not a fast count at all? So how do you think WCW botched that? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I don't know how they did, but they did.
Yeah.
There again, I mean, if it's, you know, sometimes there's stuff that happens in a match and you just got to kind of go with it and deal with it later, I guess.
Yeah, because, I mean, what we've heard is Sting said there's supposed to be a fast count. Hogan's like, give it a nice, solid, regular count. And then you can't find Eric Bischoff to talk to him about it. You know, we covered this topic in full with our What If Sting versus Hogan. But, you know, it would be good to hear your perspective on that. So pretend you're in the shoes, maybe the biggest name you've ever worked with. Let's just pretend whoever that name, maybe Bobby, maybe Tracy, whoever, the biggest name you've ever reffed. And then at the same time, they come to you and say, hey, Doug, I know, you know, this guy said this, but, you know, I'm kind of the big name around here. I need you to do a solid count. What would you do in that position?
Oh, man. Well, I would try to go find the booker first of all.
Sure, yeah. To clear it up, yeah.
Yeah, and make sure that was what was going to happen. But then, I mean, God, once you're out there, I guess you just got to, I mean, you got to kind of go with it.
Yeah. It's got to be a tough position.
Yeah, I mean, I would try to make my counts as normal as possible, but you know what I'm saying? But still not try to piss him off at the same time. That makes sense.
It does. You're so maybe like a little bit faster, but maybe not as fast as, you know, not as normal, not normal, but not fast. It's kind of like an in between. Yeah. Where it could go both ways. But that's interesting that was brought up because a lot of people, like Jared's even said this, to where Nick Patrick kind of had that slower cadence about his like and
long kind of 1, 2, 3. I mean, it was like long arm motion or something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing that, yeah, it is definitely one thing that kind of, and even Earl was bad about this, to where some of the refs would hit the mat and it was like one, and they would hit the mat and it would seem like that was the one, but it wasn't. It was like they would hit the mat and then it would be 1, 2, 3 at that point. So it was like really like a 4 count. You know what I'm saying? Where you kind of want, to me, as a guy I've never been a referee, actually was told I should have been a referee starting out. That's what my mentor, Kenny, still wanted me to be, was a ref. And perspective wise, I probably should have done that. But when it comes down to it, I would almost have tried to say, okay, my hitting of the mat, like, so I go down to start to count the 1, 2, 3. I would try to get that 1 in on my first drop. But, you know, I think even Earl kind of had a style that was like a drop 1, 2, 3, where, you know, who's right, Earl Hebner or me? Come on. But in the long run of things, you know, to me, I would have maybe tried to modify my style a little bit in that way. Do you know what I'm talking about, Doug?
Yeah, and I try not to make any sound on the mat until I'm counting 1, 2, 3, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, one more thing just on that Starrcade 97 match. Maybe a guy, if I was Nick Patrick, maybe a guy I would have went and checked with if he was available would have been Bret Hart, because he knew Bret was going to come out at the end.
Yeah.
Just been like, hey, Bret, are you still involved at the end? Because if you're still involved at the end, then I'm doing a fast count.
It's got to be fast.
Yeah. So maybe that was a person he could have asked. I don't know, since the other 3 were
It's like, hey, Brett, you just been screwed. A lot of people have said that Montreal deal was a work, though. You know, what are your thoughts on that, Doug?
I don't think it was.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people will probably argue about it until the end of time, but when you've heard the story from so many different people that were there and that knew about it, I don't think it was a work.
Yeah. I think it's weird, though, because one of the guys that really honestly, I mean, not to say this because he's gone now, but he kind of died on that hill of saying that it was a work was Scott Hall. And knowing his relationship with Sean, it always made me question if it was, because he was sold on it being a work, you know. You would think. Yeah. What I would do is if I were saying that, oh, it's a work, I would then go to my friend and say, hey, Sean, was it a work? Was it a work? Yeah. Now, at that point, if he said, between you and me, it is a work, or between you and me, it wasn't a work, I would then stop saying that it was a work, you know, not continuing on. So I don't know. There was always something about the Scott Hall saying it kind of tripped me up a little bit, especially because of the relationship that he had with Shawn Michaels, you know, even though he wasn't there at the time, you know, I don't know. But anyway, who knows? We'll never know.
We had to have somebody crack to tell us.
Yeah. Somebody would have to crack for sure. Yeah.
So Jimmy kind of asked you this in a roundabout way earlier about the MLW, but maybe besides the MLW, what's your favorite match you've ever been a part of?
Oh man, God, I don't know if I could pick just one.
Or you could give us a couple, 2 or 3. It's
because I've worked with so many great people, but even like,
and they're all listening, Doug. They want to hear their name now. Come on.
Like, there's been so many fun matches I've been a part of, and then there's, you know, ones that stick out because they meant something different.
Yeah.
A lot of the matches that I did in Columbia when Shane and Steve were feuding with Dante and Mephisto, those were some real fun matches to ref.
Oh, man, I bet.
They were wild. Like, that was just, you know.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the Von Erichs, when they won the tag titles, that was pretty cool to ref that match.
That's another people. Why aren't they bigger?
Why aren't they somewhere? That's exactly, I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe they don't want to be.
I think a lot of it maybe had to do with them living in Hawaii. Maybe some promoters didn't want to, you know, fly them over here. But I think now they're moving back to Texas.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think I saw a Facebook post over the weekend that they were saying they were moving to Texas.
Gotcha. Yeah, that tag team to me is just a no-brainer why somebody hasn't signed them. I mean, that legacy alone, and, you know, the mental health that's gone through that family has been unfortunate, but those guys seem to have it really together, you know. So
it was crazy when we went to Dallas for MLW.
Mm-hmm.
And the Von Erichs were there, of course, and Kevin came in for it.
Oh, dude.
that alone sold the show out right there.
Yeah, because Kevin's not one of these guys you can see at conventions all the time and stuff. He's, you know, he's elusive for sure. And who blames him? Who can blame him? Yeah.
He came for his boys. That was really cool.
Yeah. Dude, I can't wait to see that Iron Claw movie. Our buddy, mutual friend Cassidy Riley's in that movie. Can't wait to see his role, and just honestly can't wait to see that movie. I'm very happy about. Hopefully it's as awesome
When's it supposed to come out?
You know, that's a great question.
I've looked at that. I haven't been able to find exactly when they say it's coming out, but
yeah, I've gotten into Facebook. Yeah, I've gotten into Facebook arguments about, you know, because Zac Efron's in it playing Kevin. And, you know, I've been in Facebook arguments here recently talking about how, you know, people don't understand because they see Zac Efron as some teenage heartthrob idol kind of guy. And I'm trying to teach them about Von Erich wrestling and Facebook, you know. I always joke and say this: if you ever want to hate something that you love, join a Facebook group.
Yeah.
No matter if you love something, these people will make you hate it for a minute, you know. So
or read the comments glance on something on the internet, it'll make you just.
I love Seinfeld. I love The Office. I love, so many great shows. I join a group, I immediately start regretting it. I love the Cincinnati Reds. I join a Cincinnati Reds group, I start just hating it. That's the one thing. We've got to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling group, and luckily nobody gets in there and really acts a fool. I wish somebody would, actually, because it would make it feel more like a real group, but nobody yet. We'll see. Maybe there's hope. But Doug, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, brother. Really means the world that you did this. Not only that you've been a friend of mine, and honestly, bro, I feel like you and I kind of have always been cool from the start, but also from the start, we were kind of there together. I was not this seasoned veteran when you were not a seasoned veteran when I was there, but I feel like you and I kind of were older. And we were older than a lot of the guys, and not all of them, but, a lot of them. And, we took over and I felt like we did our jobs, to the best of our abilities, and it was cool. And I kind of feel like, in a sense, I came in with you in a little bit of a way, and I've just always enjoyed having you as a friend, man, and having known you, has been cool. So
do you still remember that picture that we had made in the dressing room at Saul?
Yeah. Yes. We need that picture. Where is that picture? Do you have it?
I will go. I know it's on my Facebook page. I'll have to go and scroll through there and find it, but I'll find it and send it to you.
Please do, man. But basically, Jared, I'm handing him money. Yeah.
I don't remember what the deal was, but I remember we thought it was funny to take the picture.
Yeah.
And
I remember somebody had a wad of cash. It might have been Kroll. And I was like, Kroll, let me see that real quick, man. Can I borrow that? I promise you can watch me do this. I'm not going to stick it in my pocket. And I go up to you and I'm like, hey, let me shake your hand with it. It was great.
And look, they used that against me a few years later when I was doing a heel ref gimmick.
Yes.
Oklahoma and Lewisburg. They posted that and they're like, see, we told you he was crooked.
That's awesome, dude. I never knew that. That's awesome. Yeah. I love that picture, man. Yeah, I haven't seen it in years, but I remember that picture well, and just great times, man. But we just thank you for coming on, brother. Really means a lot.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, brother. And I appreciate you listening to the show. I appreciate you supporting it. All you do, you share and like, and just all the stuff that you do to help our show. I greatly appreciate that, especially sharing it and letting people know about it. Because, man, all the stuff you've done and all the people and stuff, to know you're vouching for us. It's in a sense like how Arville vouched for you, and Arville vouches for us too. It's great. All these great veterans that just absolutely go out of their way to support our podcast. It just means the world. And at the same time, just knowing that you are a supporter of the show, man, it just really means the world to us, and we can't thank you enough. But the most important part is getting to know you more on this podcast, even more than I did, and just can't thank you enough for coming on. And we'll have to get you back on sometime soon, maybe for a topic, or when we get through all these interviews, man. We got a million of them coming up. So
yeah, anytime, man.
Well, we'll have some fun, and we'll figure out a good show to have you on, and maybe even we'll do a watch along where you show us some stuff about what a ref's doing or something. It'll be kind of fun to kind of pick your brain as far as that goes, especially when you get to visually see something. But we'll figure that out on down the line. Do you have anybody you'd like to say thank you to as far as helping you through your career, or as far as helping you in life?
Well, the main one would be my wife, Desiree. She's always supported me and stuck by me when I was, doing this. And she never complained a lot, Yeah. And I was gone a lot, and I missed a lot of things with the kids and everything. But she stuck by me, and we're better now than we've been ever.
Yeah.
And so, I want to thank her for that.
Yeah. It's important to have somebody by your side that's gunning for you, somebody that supports you, that's not only supports you, but helps push you. And even if it's just us doing our dream, even if it's just us getting to be involved in wrestling in ways that we never could imagine, just knowing that you have somebody that has your back, and that means the world, So, but
it does, it really does.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Desiree, and thank you, Doug Markham. And for Doug Markham and the Plastic Sheik Jared Street, I'm Jimmy Street. We'll be right back to wrap things up on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
If you're a fan of rock and music, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to check out my podcast. It's called the Decibel Geek Podcast. We've been doing it for about 10 years now. We talk about Kiss. We talk about Ozzy. We talk about Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and Metallica. We talk about all the legends from the 60s and on, up to brand new bands that you should be hearing about today that you're not going to hear on the radio. It's Decibel Geek. Wherever you find your podcasts, you'll find us there. If you love rock and roll, I can almost guarantee you're going to love my show.
This is The Big Picture, Michael Jablonski. Don't forget to tune in every week to Jablonski's Pissed Off on the Mike Jablonski's Pissed Off YouTube channel.
The what's wrong in the sport. He's gonna tell you all about it. He doesn't care what you think. You're gonna hear all about it. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. He's pissed off.
Oh man, Sheik, what another cool episode. One more in the books, one more for the good guys, one more with Doug Markham, man. What a cool episode, right? Doug's awesome.
Oh, Doug was super, man. I'm just it's glad to talk to him. I got my double Mount Rushmore out of him. I got
the double.
I got some questions about some controversial wrestling moments from the Attitude Era that kind of give us his insight to maybe what happened with Starrcade '97 and the Montreal Screwjob, stuff like that. So it's awesome to hear like a point of view from the referee who's because the referees were such an integral part in those moments.
Absolutely. Doug is very integral in moments. No, I'm just kidding. No, absolutely. You're right. Doug is an expert in that field. I know he's very humble. That's just kind of probably his style. But, talking about those integral moments with a referee isn't cool. And we don't always have a referee on the show, but, we'll have Doug on in the future again to maybe talk some moments or, just talk about more referee stuff, maybe, who knows. But the cool thing is we had our first referee on the show, and it couldn't be happier that it was my buddy, Doug Markham. When it comes down to it, Doug's listened to the whole podcast now, and he's actually been texting me and said, hey man, I've listened to this episode. I'm listening to them all, and I'm just like, brother, that's awesome. Thank you. Somebody,
thank you so much, dude.
Like seriously, we appreciate that. So, Doug, that means a lot for us to know that someone, even just one person, is listening to the whole episode. So, there are just funnier elements of the earlier episodes that Doug and Jared and I have had laughs about off air that, we'll just leave it at that. But with that being said, anybody who's listening to any of our episodes, we greatly appreciate you all. And, I've got a lot going on right now with the Wolfie D podcast and with this podcast and things like that. But one thing I do want to say is up next, we're going to have a very special bonus episode. The one that I've been kind of somewhat talking about and couldn't get out of my brain. We're actually going to bring Jeremiah Plunkett and Kroll on the episode, and we're going to discuss the Kojima NWA title story. And I if you're okay, I'm going to take that one on my own as a Jimmy Street exclusive, and we'll have a good little episode out of that. Never want to bug you past the normal schedule just because I know you're busy with your real life and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and tackle that subject alone and see what we can do to find out the full details on that Kojima deal. And essentially Kroll's fight for Plunky to maintain him as the main guy in that match Kojima's coming to America. The NWA is bringing Kojima to America in, cooperation with New Japan. I'm not going to get too deep into it because I don't know as much about it, and I can't wait for Kroll to tell the full story. And so, here coming soon, you're going to hear the full story on a very special bonus episode. If you've automatically set our podcast to download, you'll get it in your app, but the best way to keep up with us is always on GMBMPW on all your social media platforms, maybe even TikTok coming soon. We'll see about that. And then after that, we've got all kinds of good ideas coming up. More interviews, of course. We're maybe going to do a topic show coming soon. Their buddy Shane Martin. We'll see when that drops. We don't want to tell you too much. We like to tease it a little bit, but, just keep an eye on us however you can. But again, if you follow us in the apps, you'll never miss a show. We promise. Okay? As long as you're doing that, you're good to go. Make sure while you're in those apps, if you can, click 5 stars, rate, review, leave us a little review. Say, hey, these guys are pretty something. I don't know.
We're pretty somethings.
Yeah, we're pretty.
At least our mother says so. Our mother says so. Well,
yeah, you're at least something. Pretty something. Anyway, long story short, we thank y'all so much as always. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Jut, before we leave?
No, my brother, it's just a pleasure to do this with you, and glad we get to do it together.
Absolutely. Well, I don't have anything else either, my brother. Again, thank you, Doug Markham, for the excellent conversation we had with you. Having a great time with this podcast. Just keep up all the listens. We thank you all so much. We'll see y'all in a couple weeks with, I don't know. We'll see. But hang in there. So for Doug Markham, my brother, the Plastic Sheik, Jared Street, and myself, Jimmy Street, we're Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. We'll see y'all next time.
Don't forget.
Let's go get in the pool, man.
Pool time.
With a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment in my life. This has been a James Rock Street production.